Remember when the Camry was the car your aunt drove to bingo? Well, that isn't the case anymore. Toyota's dropped the all-new 2025 model, and it appears to have been spending some time with the Supra because it's got the looks that scream, I know where the good roads are. But here's one thing that might make it or break it for you. Toyota's ditched the V6 and it's hybrid only. Plus this one, it's all-wheel drive. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive. I'm your host, Brian Makse, racer, lover of driving fast, fun things. And on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, the one thing everybody's talking about with this new Camry is that it's hybrid only. But the fact that it's hybrid only means that Toyota can design this car around that system, which might be the best idea since they threw a BMW engine in the Supra. Anyway, before we get into what this is like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. So here's the deal. This is an all-new 9th generation Camry, and it goes exclusively hybrid with Toyota's 5th gen system, and it now has available on-demand all-wheel drive. Under the hood is a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder that is also mated to an electric motor at the front. Given that this is an all-wheel drive model, there's an electric motor driving the rear axle as well. Combined, this makes 232 horsepower. The transmission is Toyota's electronically controlled CVT with paddle shifters on the steering wheel. Steering's electrically assisted. Suspension's based around McPherson struts at the front with a multi-link at the rear and conventional dampers. One thing worth mentioning is that this SE and the XSE, maybe some other Camry trims, get specific suspension tuning that's a little more sporting oriented with different shocks, dampers, and anti-roll bars. Four-wheel disc brakes, of course, but this all-new Camry is a brake-by-wire car. Wheels and tires are 18s, curb weight is a little over 3,600 pounds, and this is supposed to get 34 miles per gallon combined, so we'll see how we do with that. And fun fact, this is the first time in Toyota history that the Camry is exclusively all-wheel drive. It's kind of like McDonald's changing their menu to salads only. Shocking at first, but maybe better for everyone in the long run. Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this, and if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode. Behind the wheel, I am absolutely set up perfectly. One thing worth mentioning is that in this SE trim, this seat is powered and 8-way adjustable. That seat, however, is manual. There's manual adjustment for the steering column, and once I get this set up perfectly, I've got a fantastic seating position. I feel perfectly set up with a great relationship to the steering wheel and to the pedals, and on top of that, great visibility, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Love the shape and size of the steering wheel. Encourages you to have your hands at 9 and 3, and if you think this is a bad idea, well, don't let me catch a hook in the steering wheel. Ergonomically, this is about as straightforward as Toyota gets. We don't have a lot of touch-based controls. Yes, the infotainment system is all touch-based, but what we do have here are buttons and switches and a volume dial. Who knew that in 2025 we could get a volume dial, but indeed here we are. Everything is laid out logically, very simple, very straightforward, zero learning curve. If you're coming from something else, you'll be right at home in this Camry in no time. The instrument cluster is digital. It is done in the hybrid style, so we have more of a power meter than a tachometer. I don't think there's a tachometer setting here at all, but you can hear the engine from time to time, which we will talk about in a little bit, I'm sure. But the instrument cluster is very clear, very legible, and you can pull up all kinds of different information depending on what you're looking for, but it is simple, straightforward, and the best part is it's legible in almost all lighting conditions. I have to say, I'm not too bothered by this smaller screen. Compared to a lot of the vehicles we drive on this channel, we end up with massive screens across the entire dashboard. This is Very simple, it's small, very easy to deal with. I use it on wireless CarPlay. My phone sits here in the wireless charger. There are USB ports in the cabin, that's fine, but it's very easy to live with, and the system itself is simple, straightforward. It's not a confusing UI by any stretch of the imagination, but of course, in Toyota land, being safety first, there are several things you can't drill down into in the system when you're on the move. You got to do that when you're parked. In terms of visibility, it is top notch here. Now, we do have some modestly sized outboard mirrors, a conventional mirror here, and of course, when you adjust all three of your mirrors properly, blind spots aren't real. Moving on, great visibility in all directions. Of course, there's a backup camera because it is 2025, and parking this thing is very, very easy. In terms of spaciousness, well, it is a mid-size sedan, so there's lots of room here in the front row, decent amount of storage, proper bottle holders in the doors, a couple of cup holders here, additional storage here, a massive storage bin in the armrest. I think I've got two 1 liter bottles of water in there right now, and there's still lots of room in there. In the second row, tons of room as well. And in the trunk, well, we're not talking about the dead body count. We will definitely talk about the golf bag count, and we are definitely good for at least 4 properly sized golf bags in that trunk. The basic button layout here for secondary controls definitely subscribes to Toyota's philosophy of everything in its right place, which stands in stark contrast to BMW's apparent philosophy of hide everything deep in the submenus. Fun fact, the acoustic glass that's available in the upper trims in the Camry range apparently reduces engine noise by about 30%, but in this case, in this SE, we can hear the engine noise, which is helpful for those situations when we're participating in a race that's only going on in our heads. Now, let's talk about this seat for just a second. And given that the occasion is a completely new design for this Camry, Toyota has rethought the entire seat plan here. And that bottom seat cushion's been lengthened for better thigh support. The headrest's been softened a little bit and moved back slightly so that you can have proper posture here. It's like Toyota hired someone away from a Scandinavian furniture company who was tired of making things that required an Allen wrench. The result here is that you're more comfortable over longer drives, you still have great support in the corners, and I think for those taller folks, you might even have a little bit more headroom. We don't often talk about design, but I gotta talk about a couple things. The SofTex upholstery, I'm beginning to really appreciate this. It actually feels great. It doesn't feel like synthetic leather of old. And what they've done is they've balanced it here with a little bit of fabric trim and some contrasting white bits. That's great. That cloth also carries on to the doors and the dashboard, and that's very cool. And speaking of the design, I have to say it's less minimalist than Mazda, which I really appreciate. They've got great interior design, but this is certainly less cluttered than Honda, that's for sure, and it's probably the most likely to not develop rattles over the lifetime of the car. I think the best thing about this small-ish 8-inch touchscreen is that it's not a 20-inch touchscreen, because when people get in your car, they would otherwise be seeing 20 inches of touchscreen with fingerprints all over it. Acceleration is pretty good. I suppose that's maybe not the strong suit of this Camry, but it's quick enough. It's quick enough to get up to speed quickly, and the responsiveness of the hybrid drivetrain makes all the difference. There's no lag in the system, so it's quick to respond to your inputs. And on top of that, the fact that it's all-wheel drive makes sure that every single one of those torques gets to the ground without any wheel spin. This will do 0 to 60 in a couple of ticks under 7 seconds, and that's just fine. Top speed, I think, is electronically limited to about 115 miles an hour, which is more than fast enough than you need to go in a Camry, I think. I think in any other situation, we'd have a separate conversation about the CVT, but the thing is here, it's part of Toyota's 5th gen hybrid system, and it's essential to that. And what I do find is that these eCVTs are much less rubber bandy. They're a completely different design, and I know some of you folks out there are going to complain. I do have a technical understanding of what's going on here, but at the end of the day, it works like a CVT, it operates like a CVT, it acts like a CVT from time to time. But on the other hand, I do have to say, this is one of the most refined CVT driving experiences you can find. It's a lot more natural, it's a lot more intuitive, and it's maybe as close as you're going to get to a geared transmission driving experience. But every once in a while, you do get those unnatural sounds from the engine. And by unnatural, what I mean is the transmission is doing its thing, forcing the engine to operate at a different RPM than what we're actually asking for. It's just a little disconcerting from my perspective, and that's the perspective of someone who's been driving cars with geared transmissions his entire life. But I can't complain about the CVT because it is part of this 5th gen hybrid system, which is exceptionally responsive. Yes, you can mimic gears, you can engage the manual sort of mode in these faux gears with the shift paddles as well as the shifter, and they kind of work as promised. They don't hold gears like a traditional gearbox would by any stretch of the imagination, but that's probably a good protocol to have in a Camry rather than letting some of their customers bounce the engine off the red line. It doesn't seem that it was that long ago when hybrid meant that it was all focused on efficiency, but I think what's happened with Toyota's hybrid system is they got the big check mark on the efficiency side of things, and now what they're doing is they're supplementing the performance of the vehicle with these 2 electric motors, because this is all-wheel drive. It's got an electric motor that's mated to the gasoline engine, and then there's one at the rear axle, and it all works very, very well together. When we're leaving a stop in a hurry, there's not even a hint of wheel spin. The torque delivery at the rear axle is instantaneous, and that's one of the things that makes this entire hybrid system so good from a driving enthusiast perspective. And in general, the acceleration of this Camry hybrid in any condition is impressive. Whether we're accelerating from a stop or up to highway speeds, acceleration's impressive in every condition. Much more impressive than my ability to explain to my friends why I'm reviewing a Camry again. And fun fact, the 232 horsepower that this hybrid system makes this Camry more powerful than a V6 Camry from a few years ago, which kind of negates the whole argument from the there's no replacement for displacement crowd. The last thing I have to say about the CVT, and while it's not as engaging as a geared transmission, it's less annoying than most, it's more responsive than most, and it doesn't make you wish for death unlike the worst of CVTs. I have to say, this particular Camry takes what Toyota does best, delivers some efficiency, a whole lot of practicality, and then for 2025 adds a whole lot of driving enjoyment to the equation. It might make this a jack of all trades in a market full of one-trick ponies that either bore you to tears or bankrupt you with repair bills. Let's find some corners, shall we? Let's. Brake on entry, downshift, turn in is crisp, got a little bit of body roll, suspension's doing a great job soaking up the bumps. Decent feel through the chassis as well, and I have to say I'm impressed with how the suspension just soaks up these bumps. The road surface here is just terrible, but I have to say that the way this Camry handles is surprisingly good. I never thought I'd say that in a million years, but it's 2025 and here we are. In the interest of science, I did take this on my handling loop to play with this and understand what its balance is near and around and maybe over the limit. And I have to say that it's surprisingly neutral. I think that has to do with the fact that there's the electric motor at that rear axle, because on corner exit, when I ask it to pick up the throttle, get a little bit of acceleration, just come back onto that throttle, exiting a corner, it's incredibly neutral. Sure, if you're ham-fisted, this might understeer, but on this channel we know cars don't understeer by themselves. Yes, we know this SE and the XSE get some different suspension settings, springs, dampers, anti-roll bars, and it's definitely no LC500, that's for sure, but this is actually fun to drive in the corners. Given that this is a brake-by-wire car, we have to talk about it, and surprisingly, Toyota's engineers have put a lot of work into this. It's not a simple system, and they've actually made it very interesting for drivers like you and me. And by interesting, I mean they've done a lot of engineering. What happens is the system reads your pedal inputs through sensors, processes them through a dedicated ECU, and applies precisely calculated pressure to each wheel. Toyota solved the artificial feel problem with brake-by-wire cars with a clever stroke simulator that maintains consistent pedal feedback regardless of what's happening with the hybrid system. Steering is strong on center, no issue there, but as you'd expect with an electrically assisted system, not a lot of feel or feedback comes through the steering wheel, but there is a decent amount of chassis feel, so I can understand what's going on at each of the four contact patches going through a corner. And again, this thing has incredible balance on corner exit. It is impressive. Never, ever would have thought I would have said that about a Camry. The body and wheel control is excellent. These are just conventional dampers and they do a great job. And keep in mind, this is still no hardcore sports car, and there is a little bit of secondary movement over some larger road imperfections, but it's very well controlled. Generally, it works wonderfully, and it's only over those larger road imperfections where you get a little bit of secondary movement, but after that, the car settles quickly, and none of those secondary movements are disconcerting at all. It's only over those larger bumps where that happens. And regular driving, this car is very composed, and then on the flip side, you just get this comfortable ride that will make you and your passengers happy over long distances. And for fun, let's get into that brake pedal again. Nice controllable weight transfer. Great feel out of that pedal for it being a brake-by-wire car. I think that really has to do with the quality of chassis feel that's in this Camry. Even though we've got those slightly stiffer springs, shocks, and sway bars, there's still a bit of body roll here, but drivers like you and me, we can use that as a feedback loop to understand what's going on with this Camry at any phase of the corner. And this is the thing, when you've got a very well resolved dynamic package, steering, handling, braking, that gives you a lot of confidence. And that is your first line of defense in terms of avoiding a crash. If you can actively avoid a crash and not depend on the passive safety systems that are on board, you have a greater chance of avoiding a crash. And I've got all the confidence to handle any kind of situation in this Camry. And after several days, I feel right at home, right on top of this car, and I feel like I can do just about anything with it, except maybe set some record lap times at my local racetrack. How do you spec yours? Well, I have some thoughts. What you are looking at is a 2025 Toyota Camry SE all-wheel drive in underground paint with the black and white SofTex interior. In the US, this is an SE with a convenience package, cold weather package, and the moonroof. Base price in the US is $32,525, and as tested, this is $34,495. In Canada, this is specifically called the SE all-wheel drive upgrade, and base price and as tested is $37,950, and these prices are before freight, taxes, fees, etc. It's worth mentioning that in the US, the cold weather package is a $500 option. In Canada, that is essential, which is why it's probably standard, but in Florida, that's about as useful as snowshoes on a fish. The Camry lineup has a bit of slicing and dicing going on with product planning. The SE trim we're looking at is positioned as the value offering with a sporter orientation. It comes standard with heated seats and an 8-way power driver's seat and a heated steering wheel, features you'd expect to pay extra for in this class. What you don't get are the rain sensing wipers that come on the XLE, which is actually kind of odd because those typically aren't expensive to include. It seems like Toyota's product planning wants to make a clear line of delineation between the sport-oriented trims and the luxury-oriented trims, even though it would make sense to have some features carry on across the board. Cross-shopping this against a RAV4 hybrid puts you in the classic sedan versus crossover debate. Same powertrain, same reliability, but different answers to the question of how much do you care about driving dynamics versus being able to see over traffic. And fun fact, you can get this SE all-wheel drive for about $4,000 less than the XSE, which you're basically paying for a larger screen and ventilated seats. It's kind of like airline pricing where the extra legroom costs you more than the actual ticket. In terms of speccing yours, given that this SE all-wheel drive is the value proposition in the range, I don't think there's anything else I'd really want. It does everything I need, and at this price, it's a decent value. The only thing I would do is not get this underground paint. I'd get something a lot less fashionable for 2025. My verdict, well, let's start with fuel consumption because this is interesting. I think for the first time ever, I've achieved what is the promised mileage. In combined driving, I'm getting 34 miles per gallon, 33.6 to be exact. That's about 7 liters per 100 kilometers for my Canadian friends. And for me, that's astonishing. For somebody who loves to use the throttle and take advantage of all the performance that is available in this Camry, I'm just shocked. But nonetheless, it is impressive, and that goes to show that this hybrid system actually works when it counts. But here's the thing, this is not a sports sedan. It is a sports sedan that won't bore you to tears on a good road, which is more than I can say about Camrys of old. The biggest surprise is that the SE, being the value focused trim, it doesn't feel like a compromise. You get the hybrid drivetrain's efficiency, the confidence of all wheel drive in any weather conditions, and enough standard equipment to make this a genuinely appealing package. And for an enthusiast on a budget looking for a car that can do it all, including handle a good back road when you find one, this SE all-wheel drive might just be the sedan that changes your mind about what a Camry can be. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 Toyota Camry SE all-wheel drive. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this video with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. And if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merchant. Toyota is making some fantastic manuals these days. Thanks, Toyota. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even Toyota Camrys. And since you've hung around this long, well, let's have a look at one of my favorite modern Toyotas that might be a good garage mate to this Camry SE all-wheel drive. It's the GR Corolla with the automatic, which is new for 2025. And even though it's not a manual, it's still very enjoyable to drive. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time.